Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to Online Darts. A very special exclusive interview here. We've got the asset Paul Nicholson over in Germany on the European Tour. However, we're not talking European Tour action. Paul, it's the first time this has been announced that you are now a non-executive director of the Modern Amateur Darts Association, MAD for short. Excited?
Yeah, just a little bit. I had a very good conversation with one of the fellow directors and had a little chat with Steve Brown as well about this opportunity. And I've been in the game a long time, a lot longer than people realise. I was a county player when I was 19, 20 years old, and I played for Northumberland many times through my early 20s. And then obviously I moved to Australia, and I've sampled what the world has to offer when it comes to darts. And the one thing that has rung true with me is that there have been inconsistencies with the amateur game, and it's like batting your head against the wall sometimes when it comes to some of the things that you see. But the politics of the game has been in question for quite a long time, probably since the early 90s. And with the way that Steve Brown has come into the game, and not just as a professional dart player, but with the work he's done with the Junior Darts Corporation, which we're starting to see the fruits of now, I have every faith in his drive and his ambition with the amateur side of things as well. And I've got no questions in my mind that I think he can do a great job. But to be asked to be part of this journey very early, I'm very humbled.
What's the bit that most excites you at the moment about putting the amateur game on the right path?
I think we've got a good footing to start with. I think we have a very big job ahead. And I think that's the thing that excites me when it comes to certain changes that need to be made within sport. You could probably talk about when, the Premier League came in, they wanted to jazz things up and make it a bit more late 20th century, possibly, before the 21st century kicked in. And I think the blueprint that the original guys for the WDC, which is now the PDC, the vision that they had is probably what we have now. So I think it's the journey that I'm looking forward to. I trust Steve implicitly. I trust the other directors implicitly. I think the amateur game will have the best backing. And we have the top of the tree stuff with the PDC right now, but we do need to look at the foundations of how things are fed towards that pinnacle, which we have. And you look at what the JDC have done as almost like a feeder system towards the development tour. We know the development tour is doing well, and the challenge tour, my word, look at what we're getting from that. So if we look even further and make that little pyramid of darts at the bottom even stronger, then we're probably looking after the sport for the next century, which is my ambition.
Do you feel that the MAD system and what everyone wants to do with it, is this the missing piece of the puzzle that we haven't had for a long time?
I think it's a perfect start. I think Steve understands that with the MAD blueprint, it's something that can spread globally. Now, Steve's a very ambitious individual, as everybody knows. He's been to Australia, he's been to China, he's been to Gibraltar, he's been all over the place with the JDC blueprint. Now, with the existing UK blueprint for MAD, I think it's incredibly exciting, but imagine that on a global scale. Now, the whole thing about MAD is we're not trying to change people's views about how they play darts or how they want to play darts. There's going to be somewhere for them to possibly progress. And it has to be transparent, it has to have structure, and it needs a little bit of trust as well. That's what this is all about, in my opinion. So I think as far as the missing piece in the puzzle, I'm not even sure that we've found the missing piece in the puzzle yet. We're going to be putting a jigsaw together over the next 5 to 10 years, and we are going to constantly find little things that are missing. But the important thing is that we need to start now, especially when the amateur game is littered with question marks right now.
Was this also an important thing for the sport? Because obviously the JDC are looking after all the youngsters across the globe now, but not every one of them is going to become a professional, and they still need somewhere to filter through and go when their JDC journey is done. And for want of a better term, if they're not good enough to play at the top end, they still need that area where they can enjoy the sport.
It's about giving people options. Now, there have been options in the past, and this is going to be the biggest challenge for MAD, in my opinion, because the BDO mentality that we have had, not just with dart players, but with the public as well, we are going to, find that little brick wall is going to be there for quite some time. So when people look at the idea of MAD, they're going to think, well, hang on a minute, what about the BDO? It's going to take a while for people to realize that things are starting to move on from how things have been since the 70s. It's a long time. It's a long spell of people having the same thing every January. And even now, when you speak to someone in the street and you say to them, I work in darts, they say, oh, are you at Lakeside? It's amazing how many people say that. So we have a huge behavioural change to handle, not just with the public, but with the players who play locally. But they need somewhere to have that little bit of progression if they want it. Now, that's the most important thing here, Phil. If they want it, it's optional. And we're not trying to change what people do with their local leagues every week or their super leagues or whatever. But they can opt in if they want that gradual progression towards doing something else. And that's what it's all about. It's not, this is the rule, you will follow it. Here's a blueprint. If you like it, follow it. It's great.
Just touching on what you said there about the perception and the walls and the barriers, how do MAD go about breaking those down quickly? Because obviously the longer it takes, the more it's going to stagnate and everything like that. So how do we go about getting through them early on in this blueprint?
I don't think it happens quickly. I think it happens very slowly. I was a county player back in the late 90s, early 90s, like I mentioned before. And there were great players in my neck of the woods who were, castigated for wanting to play wherever they wanted to go. And that culture needs to not come back. We need to allow people to do whatever they want. John Part said to me many, many years ago that it was great that we had BDO and PDC because more people were playing darts. The thing about MAD is that there's going to be a structure in place for people to follow. All we want is people to play darts. All we want is people to have fun playing it. And if they want to go somewhere, great. But as far as doing this quickly, that's not going to happen. We understand that. It is going to be a challenge. This is a long-term project. It's going to take a lot of, stoic nature. And we're going to have a few hits, I reckon, with some people. They're going to say, well, we know better. Well, the fact is, we're going to listen to everybody and see what they want. But ultimately, as directors, we have experience. We know what the sport deserves. And we're going to be pliable. We're going to give the public what they want. But we do have a bit of expertise. That's why we've got, players like myself and Steve and, great directors in place to possibly give them the stuff that they've been lacking for the last 10 years.
In terms of the amateur game, is this the most exciting thing that we've seen in arguably 2 decades?
I have to say yes. When Steve sent me the blueprint for the MAD franchises throughout the country, it was on a Friday night. I was playing a game of cards during lockdown with some friends of mine, and he said, and this was at 10:45 on a Friday night, and I thought, this is the mark of the bloke, right? And he said, can you have a look at this for me? And I said, when do you want me to have a look at it? He said, well, whenever you've got a minute. I said, don't worry, mate. When I finish this game of cards, I'll have a look at it. And I was looking at it at midnight, and I'm like this, reading it. I'm thinking, Jesus, this is good, isn't it? It's exciting. And it got my ears pricked up at midnight on a Saturday morning. And I thought, this is something. And I'll wait for this to, materialise. And I've seen it materialise on social media day by day. And there are big things afoot, which I can't divulge at this time. But yes, it's exciting. And I suppose from my perspective, as a kid who didn't have anywhere to play, seeing what the JDC has done, I think, wow. And then as someone who came through in his, 18, 19, 20-year-old, the amateur game was a bit bitty. It was a bit fractured. And to see this coming through as well, I've got every faith. And I am supremely excited about the whole thing.
Also as well, will this help get rid of the stigma that's still around darts, that it's just a pub game as well, seeing that it's going to be spread across the country and evolving across the world, that there are organisations that are running it properly from the very bottom to the very top?
Yeah, that's true. I think there's a twofold argument with this. The first thing is that Eric Bristow once said, it's a pub game and it will always have those roots. You can take the dart player from the pub, but you can't take the pub from the dart player. Now, I do agree with Eric to a certain extent. We can't forget about its history and where it's come from and where it has boomed from. But at the same time, if you look at the game of golf, for instance, it has evolved from, the Fuzzy Zellas and the Lanny Wadkins of the late 70s, early 80s to what it is now, where you've got athletes playing the game. We're well behind that, but I do see in 25 years athletes playing darts or, thinking men's athletes playing our game and our sport. I think we're on a long road towards that. I think we can get there. But on a global sense, it's different because they play it differently in every country, in every part of the world. How it is in Australia and New Zealand is different to Japan. It's different to the States. But we have to be careful with what we're doing. We do want to change things with academies, with the way kids are coming through. But we have to give the people who do play in pubs and clubs around the world, and particularly in the United Kingdom to start with, the ability to continue to do that. That's really important because that's where people predominantly play still in the amateur game. So there's a lot of different branches to this tree, and we've got to look at them all and to make sure we get it right.
The other thing as well, the software that is being driven by man is very exciting, is it? Like you, I've seen the software and how it all works. This is a very exciting time to take us into that will take the amateur game into the digital era as well, isn't it?
Yes, it has to happen. Look at every single industry on the planet right now that is evolving into something that will survive into the 22nd century. It has to have technology behind it. And if you look at the ease of people using Dart Connect, for instance, how that's revolutionized the way that we look at statistics within the game, I think the guy that figured this out is a genius. So someone was always going to do it. He just happened to be the first one. And that product is always evolving, in my opinion. It's not perfect, but it is the best tool we have for the pro game and for the amateur game going forward. But there are other things that need to be done for things to be updated, whether it be statistics, wins, losses, league tables. They can be done via smartphones, tablets, smart TVs if you want. And it can be done instantaneously. Whereas before, I was privy to being in the Northumberland Super League, filling in the average sheets in between games and thinking, I don't want to do this, man. I don't want to do this. And then at the end of the day, someone's got, well, who's going to send it off? And nobody wanted to do that, but it had to be done. You had to have a secretary for the club, and they had to do all these admin jobs. That's all in the past. It's a case of, right, who's won? Click, 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 done. Move on, next game. And that is how we need to work. If this thing is going to be consistent, transparent, and fair for everyone, we need to have good software.
On a Friday night, I just go on what you said, on a Friday night searching, who's got a red pen for your tons?
I tell you what, certain things that can't be forgotten. When you do get a ton plus score, I think we should massage the things from the past. I think we should still have red marks for the tons and the ton 40s and ton 80s. I think that's a nice touch.
And for yourself, obviously, as a director, are you going to try and play in some of the events as well if you're about and in your area, just to see how they're all going?
I think that would be a lot of fun, and to be someone who has been quite successful in the PDC. To if I'm not on tour, go and play in these amateur events. I think it just goes to show what is important to me. I really, really want the next generation of players to change the image of the sport for the positive. I think the stigma of our sport is changing slowly. We are gradually getting towards my ambition, which is seeing a dart player on the front of a men's health magazine or a men's fitness magazine at some point, probably in the next 15 years, maybe even less than that. But that journey is my own personal one. But there are going to be other things as well that I want to be part of. And one of them is to play in those amateur events. And when the time comes, I'll absolutely be part of that.
Do you think the dream could happen that one person wins the JDC World title, the MAD World title, and the PDC World title? Do you think one day the dots could be joined and that can happen?
I don't see a reason why not. I mean, you look at someone like Keane Barry, for instance, who was a JDC product, and he's won everything on the way up. I mean, he's already there, isn't he? He's on the tour next year, for 2021 and 2022. So he's won the JDC Championship. He's won the lot, hasn't he? He's been brilliant on the Challenge Tour, the Development Tour, the lot. He is a walking blueprint for the future, and you could sell him anywhere in the world when it comes to darting publics. And I'm really excited for him. And we're really, really proud of what he's done, because with the JDC's help and obviously a lot of other people's help, you know, his family and his girlfriend and stuff, they've all supported him. But I just think he's a look at the future. He's what we want. And we've been crying out for someone like him for quite a long time. But not to forget the likes of Bradley Brooks, of course, who broke through to the tour by the JDC. I personally think with this tiered system that's coming in, we could have a JDC champion, a mad champion, and then something like an Order of Merit winner on the Challenge Tour, and then something else as well, like a PDC World Champion 5 or 6 years after that. There's no reason why that can't happen, and this is why it's been put in place.
Paul, pleasure to speak to you over in Germany, and it's a very exciting time for darts, and we're glad you're part of the journey, and we look forward to seeing how it develops. Well,
yeah, me too.
For the Euro Tour, mate. Pleasure to take time to speak to you as always, mate.
Thanks very much, Phil.